Welcome to Connecting Dots, a laser-focused, quick-fire interview on food and the economy with international experts, where we seek answers to questions all of us should be asking. I'm Ajay Jakar, Chairman Bharat Krishik Samaj of Farmers Forum India, as well as the Vice Chair of Action Track to Shift to Healthy and Sustainable Consumption Patterns at the UN Food Systems Summit. We are delighted to introduce Ertharin Cousin. You have held so many key responsibilities that if I was to read them all, I would run short of time in this 15-minute interview. So it would suffice to say that you have served as the Executive Director of the UN Food Program and that you have been in the Forbes magazine's list of the world's 100 most powerful women and have been named in the TIME 100 most influential people in the world list. Thank you, Ertharin, for joining us today.
Thank you for this opportunity to have this conversation.
Why does nutrition and food and livelihoods and climate action matter to you so much? Was it informed by your life's experiences, work experiences? Why is it so important to you?
Well, thank you very much for that question. You know, I come from a family of farmers. Like most Black Americans, our families began during slavery and they worked on farms. And my grandfather, even when I was a young child, was a farm laborer before he retired. And my dad was a chef. My grandmother was a chef. Food was a part of our lives. And the idea to me that there are people who don't have access to enough food seems inhumane. You cannot grow up as a Christian and believing in opportunity for all and believing in responsibility for humanity without recognizing you cannot grow up as a Christian and without recognizing that it is inhumane for some people not to have access to the nutritious food that they require.
One thing that is common to women, people of color, and farmers is there seem to be an intentionally underrepresented lack of equity and still not being included in the global tables of power and influence. How do we reset the table?
We reset the table by doing exactly what we're doing here, AJ. I look at you as the Vice Chair of Action Track 2 and Agnes Kalibata now as the leader of the Food Systems Summit. And I can see progress being made, that there are people of color, people of ethnic differences leading the conversation and the work and the policy change that is necessary. But our responsibility is to keep those doors open and continue to identify those who are from different racial groups, different geographies around the globe, that there is a place at the table for them. We will not make a difference if we are not continuously ensuring that we are not the only people who look like us, who are leading and working on these issues, that we continue to bring opportunities forward for others.
You have said before that global challenges require international cooperation. There is realization today that many agriculture practices are a problem, but can be a solution to climate change also. And nations cannot prosper in isolation. You have worked in the government, in the private sector, in the non-profit sector. What are your thoughts on evolving the World Trade Organization Agreement on Agriculture to ensure fairness, equity, and justice for the global South, for the smallholder farmers, and which will also help climate change mitigation?
That's a big question, but let me simply say that we need trade. Trade is part of what will create food security across the entire globe. But we need to ensure that we have rules around that trade, rules that provide opportunity for and access to markets for farmers from across the globe, which will ensure that no one is left behind. And that way, we can have a global trading system that supports the access to nutritious food, but also provides for the economic opportunity for smallholder farmers included in that system.
Thank you for that. The other question, and it worries me and it worries a lot of farmers who work on policy, is that we see that there is a lot of talk of farm to fork, from farm to consumer, but the big tech and the new food industry, we see an increasing shift of food, retail, and tech companies dictating to and dominating farmers. I'm concerned that these companies will dominate the data on farmers, markets, and retails. How do we shape ethics, guidelines, antitrust regulations to ensure and protect not only farmers, but even small, medium enterprises?
Correct. We need rules. We need a rules-based system. We need global standards that have global committed guidelines from all of the countries, and then those are supported by national policies that are implemented at the local level that will ensure that we have a operational structure, a rules-based structure that provide the opportunity for access to new technology while also protecting, as you know, the data of farmers. We need a system that moves us from a more chemical agriculture to digital to biological. But we need to ensure that we create the policies and systems that will provide for equitable access, as well as protecting the rights of those who could potentially benefit from these new tools.
You have advocated for innovation. As a farmer, I've seen impact of innovation, both good, and when innovation is not stewarded by appropriate regulation, it can also do harm. How do we enable smallholders to have access to innovation and not make them dependent on intellectual property rights, high prices, and still have social security like insurance, like farmers have in the US or in the EU? And same, I think so, is the conversation happening on intellectual property rights on COVID vaccines. So what would be your opinion on this?
I recognize that significant investments go into the development of discoveries that provide for the change that we need, whether it's in the healthcare system, as we're seeing now with the vaccines, or it's in new advanced plant breeding technologies that we require in agriculture. But we need to ensure that we have a system in place that provides for those rules that we talked about that allow access, but also a system in place that provides opportunity for licensing of intellectual property that will ensure that small businesses and medium-sized enterprises have access to these tools. And we also need to ensure that governments are investing in their farmers in a way that provides the subsidies for the food that we need. Too often, governments subsidize the commodities that for biofuels without subsidizing the produce and other even cultural plants that will support access to more nutritious food. And so we need, as advocates, to drive towards the change in those subsidies that will ensure farmers have the access to the resources that will provide them with the financial ability to purchase, lease, and use those new tools as they come online. We must ensure that new tools that come online don't only come online for the influential farmers, the high and affluent farmers, but also come online for small farmers and particularly for smallholder farmers in the developing world.
Thank you so much for that. And what would you, with your experience, what do you think would be the top 3 areas where the US and Biden administration would be doing to lead game-changing solutions in food and agriculture? Where do you foresee that policy changing?
It's very much in the areas that we've been talking about today. First of all, in innovation and ensuring that they are investing in the innovation that is necessary for us to have public goods that are accessible by farmers, whether, as I said, affluent or smallholder farmers or small and medium-sized enterprises. The research that is necessary that will support that innovation. We need to continue. This administration is committed to continuing supporting the research, particularly at academic institutions, that can create public new public tools that are available for commercialization by new businesses that come online. And finally, by financing, ensuring that we are creating the financial mechanisms, whether they are providing the catalyst to private sector financiers, or we are providing new public mechanisms to support the access to these new tools, to the trading systems that we talked about earlier, that we have not only the public will to perform the work, but the financial means to ensure that all have access to the opportunity to participate in these new tools, as well as in an expanding market system.
This is my last question, and it comes from experience working in India and working with other developing nations here. It's so frustrating to get change from happening. In the various positions you have held, you have had many achievements in reducing hunger and malnutrition across the world. But lots more needs to be done. In your experience, what is that one thing that you really wanted to do and could not because of the legacy of the system, or because the food systems were so broken that it could not be achieved?
That makes me smile, because the one thing that I really wanted to do, and I'm trying to work on it now that I am outside the system, is back to that question of financing again. Too often, women farmers, women business owners, those who are geographically considered too risky by the financial community, don't have access to the capital that they need to scale up businesses, to scale up farming practices, to ensure that we are creating both the financial return for those who invest, but the nutrition impact that is required to change the health outcomes for those living in these areas. And the challenge is that capital is also often elusive and unavailable to those that I've spoken about. And so my goal is to now ensure that we not just talk about what we need to do, but we provide the financial resources to those who are doing the work, to give them the opportunity, to everyone, wherever you are, that geography no longer becomes an impediment to the opportunity to fully participate and economically benefit from a functioning food system.
Thank you so much. That's really inspiring. And I thank you for the work you're doing, not only on behalf of my farmers organization, but on behalf of everyone here in the developed world. We wish you all the success. And I personally hope to meet you soon, maybe in New York, maybe in Rome somewhere soon enough this year. Thank you so much for this opportunity, for having joined us today. Thank you. Take care and be safe. Thank you.
Thank you. This was great.